I remember that morning like it was yesterday. The sun was still struggling to rise over the horizon, casting a dim orange glow over the dusty, rundown trailer park. My partner, Mike, and I pulled up in our cruiser, the only sound being the crunch of gravel beneath our tires. We were here to serve a warrant on a suspected meth lab, courtesy of a tip from a concerned citizen. As we stepped out of the vehicle, the air hit me like a punch to the gut, thick with the stench of chemicals and desperation. I could feel the weight of my gun on my hip, a familiar comfort in situations like this. Mike and I exchanged a brief nod, our eyes locking in a silent understanding. We'd done this countless times before, but you never knew what you were walking into. I took a deep breath, my mind racing through the possibilities. What would we find inside? Would they resist? My heart rate was steady, a slow drumbeat in my chest. I'd learned to control my nerves over the years, but it was always there, lurking just beneath the surface. We approached the trailer, our footsteps quiet on the worn wooden steps. I could hear the muffled sounds of voices inside, the rustling of unknown objects. My hand instinctively went to my radio, ensuring it was secure on my belt. Mike took point, his eyes fixed on the door. I covered him, my gaze sweeping the surrounding area, searching for any signs of escape or ambush. With a deep breath, Mike knocked on the door, his voice firm and authoritative. "Sheriff's Department. We have a warrant. Open up." The silence that followed was oppressive, heavy with tension. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. Something didn't feel right. I remember the day like it was yesterday. The sun was setting over the desert landscape, casting a golden glow over the dusty landscape. I was riding solo in my patrol car, the radio crackling with the usual chatter of dispatch and other units. Then, a call came in that caught my attention. A possible 10 to 96, a mentally disturbed person, at the old abandoned gas station on Highway 12. As I arrived on scene, I could see a figure pacing back and forth in front of the rundown building. My training kicked in, and I assessed the situation, taking in every detail. The individual, later identified as 27-year-old Jake Wilson, was agitated, talking to himself, and gesticulating wildly. I could see the fear in his eyes, the desperation. I approached calmly, trying not to startle him, and introduced myself. "Jake, my name is Deputy Thompson. I'm here to help you." My voice was steady, reassuring. I've dealt with situations like this before, but you never know what can trigger someone. At first, Jake seemed receptive, but as I tried to get him to calm down, he became more agitated. His words slurred, and his movements became more erratic. I knew I had to act fast. I called for backup, but I knew it would take a few minutes to arrive. I slowly moved in, trying to create distance between Jake and the nearby traffic. My hand rested on my holster, a subtle reminder that I was prepared for anything. Jake's eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, I saw a glimmer of understanding. Then, his face contorted, and he took a step back, his hand slipping into his waistband. My heart rate quickened, but I didn't flinch. I've seen this before, the telltale sign of someone reaching for a weapon. "Jake, don't do it," I warned, my voice firm but controlled. My hand tightened around my own weapon, ready to react if necessary. I stepped out of my cruiser, the crunch of gravel beneath my boots echoing through the still morning air. The rural route stretched out before me, a seemingly endless stretch of asphalt flanked by rolling hills and dense woods. The call had come in just after dawn, a reported break-in at the old Jenkins place. I'd been on the force long enough to know that in these parts, a B&E usually meant some kid looking for a quick score or a thrill. But something about this one didn't sit right. As I approached the house, I noticed the front door was open, creaking lazily in the gentle breeze. I drew my sidearm, my eyes scanning the perimeter. The windows were intact, no signs of forced entry. I radioed for backup, my voice steady despite the growing sense of unease. I cleared the porch, my footsteps deliberate, and stepped inside. The air inside was stale, heavy with the scent of decay. My gaze swept the room, taking in the scattered belongings, the overturned furniture. This wasn't some amateur hour smash and grab. Whoever did this was looking for something specific. I moved methodically through the house, my eyes drinking in every detail. The kitchen was a mess, drawers yanked open, contents spilling onto the countertops. A faint smudge of blood on the edge of the counter caught my attention. I knelt, my heart rate ticking up a notch. This was no longer just a burglary. I stood, my mind racing with possibilities. I needed to secure the scene, get forensics in here to process the evidence. I took a deep breath, my training kicking in. I'd seen my share of crime scenes, But there was something about this one that had my gut telling me this was just the beginning. I stepped out of my cruiser, the crunch of gravel beneath my boots a familiar sound. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and fresh-cut grass. I took a deep breath, mentally preparing myself for what lay ahead. The address on the warrant read 1456, Oakwood Drive, a nondescript suburban home with a perfectly manicured lawn. You'd never suspect the secrets it held. As I approached the front door, I noticed the curtains were drawn, an unusual sight in this neighborhood. I exchanged a glance with my partner, Rachel. We'd been working this case for weeks, following a trail of digital breadcrumbs that led us to this doorstep. The suspect, a charismatic businessman, had woven a web of deceit so intricate it had taken us months to unravel. I knocked twice, my eyes scanning the surrounding area. The door creaked open, and a middle-aged man with a chiseled jawline and a forced smile greeted me. "Can I help you, officers?" he asked, his tone dripping with innocence. I flashed my badge, my hand resting on the grip of my service weapon. "Sheriff's Department. We have a warrant to search the premises." His eyes darted to the side, a flicker of panic before he regained composure. "Of course, please come in." I stepped inside, my gaze sweeping the room. The interior was immaculate, but my trained eye picked up on the telltale signs of a hastily cleaned space. Rachel began to secure the area, her voice firm as she instructed the suspect to remain still. I followed my instincts, my eyes locking onto a bookshelf in the corner. Something about it seemed off. I walked over, my fingers trailing along the spines of the books. That's when I saw it. A faint line, almost imperceptible, where the shelf didn't quite meet the wall. I pressed gently, and a hidden compartment swung open, revealing a trove of incriminating documents. My gut told me we'd finally found the smoking gun. I stepped out of my cruiser, the crunch of gravel beneath my boots echoing through the still morning air. The auto body shop, a rundown, faded sign creaking in the gentle breeze, looked like it hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint in years. A hunch told me this place was connected to our string of burglaries, and I aimed to find out how. As I approached the shop, the smell of gasoline and sweat hit me like a punch to the gut. I've been around enough to know that smell. It's the scent of desperation, of people trying to make a living on the fringes. I pushed open the creaky door, and a bell above it let out a tired clang. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of paint and solvents. A guy, mid-30s, with a scruffy beard and a grease-stained apron, looked up from the car he was working on. His eyes narrowed, sizing me up. I flashed my badge, and he wiped his hands on a rag, his gaze darting around the shop like he was searching for an escape route. "Deputy James," I introduced myself, my voice firm but calm. "I'm investigating a string of burglaries in the area. I understand you might have some information that can help me." He snorted, a mixture of fear and defiance in his eyes. "Don't know what you're talking about, officer." I've heard that line enough times to know it's usually a lie. I took a deep breath, letting my gaze sweep the shop. Tools and parts littered the workbenches, but it was the corner of my eye that caught something. A pile of broken electronics, scraps of wiring, and shattered glass. This was no ordinary auto body shop. "Let's take a walk outside, friend," I said, my tone firm but controlled. I knew I had him right where I wanted him. I remember the day like it was yesterday. The sun was setting over the desert landscape, casting an orange glow over the makeshift command center we'd set up outside the abandoned warehouse. My team and I had been working around the clock to contain the situation, and it was finally time to hand off the reins to Homeland Security. As I stood outside the perimeter, sipping on a lukewarm cup of coffee, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Relief, exhaustion, and a hint of frustration all swirled together in my chest. We'd done our job, but I knew this was far from over. I watched as the HS agents arrived, their black SUVs and tactical gear a stark contrast to our own worn uniforms and battered patrol cars. They moved with a quiet confidence, their eyes scanning the area like they owned the place. I couldn't blame them. They were the experts, after all. I spotted Agent Thompson, the lead on the case, walking towards me. Her eyes locked onto mine, and I could sense the unspoken understanding between us. This was a job well done, but it was far from over. "Deputy," she said, her voice firm but polite. "It's time for us to take over. Your team's done an excellent job containing the situation." I nodded, feeling a sense of pride and fatigue wash over me. "Appreciate it, Agent. We've had a long 48 hours. Thompson nodded sympathetically. "I can imagine. We'll take it from here. You and your team can stand down." I turned to my team, giving them a nod. "All right, folks, let's pack it up. HS has got this." As we began to dismantle our command center, I couldn't help but think about the long road ahead. This was just the beginning of a much larger investigation, one that would likely take months, if not years, to unravel. But for now, I was just grateful to hand off the reins and take a well-deserved break. I stood in the silence of the deserted highway, the only sound being the distant hum of sirens fading into the distance. The smell of smoke and sweat clung to my uniform, a constant reminder of the chaos that had just unfolded. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the scene, but I felt no sense of peace. My mind was still racing, replaying the events of the past few hours like a bad recording.